Thanks everybody, and welcome. Kia ora koutou. He uri ahau no hamoa, ko mato le awhi toku maunga, ko Waikato toku awa. No tokoroa ahau, ko nanise jinin toku ingoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. We are thrilled to be welcoming you into this Impact Hub Zoom Theatre for the next precious 2.25 hours. Thank you for choosing to be here with us. As we all know, there's lots of Zoom opportunities during Tech Week, so we really appreciate you being here with us. The inventions of tech entrepreneurs and their rollout in the world are changing our lives, our futures, and our planet, and are at an accelerating rate. The pace at which this is happening and the potential impact on our lives is difficult sometimes to keep step with. We've all seen in recent years the negative effects that new technologies can have, whether they be weapons, addictive technologies, or simply well-intentioned platforms being used by bad actors. Here at Impact Hub, we work with entrepreneurs who want to make a positive impact in their world through business. We help them to develop both profitable and purposeful businesses. And so we have a deep interest in tech for good, where the focus is to solve the world's most pressing problems through innovative tech. Before we get going tonight, I'd like to make 4 housekeeping mentions. Firstly, we'd love it if you keep your mics on mute so that we can hear our speakers, and please don't be offended if one of our team mutes it for you if we hear noise. There will be time later in the evening to have a conversation. Number 2, tech. Sammy and her team from Event Elves are going to be taking control of our tech tonight. However, if you need help, you can reach out to one of our team. So Emma, if you would give a little wave, Timon and myself, feel free to private message me if you need to. The session tonight is being recorded and it will be shared with event registrations afterwards. And last but not least, we'll be using a couple of pieces of tech tonight. So the Whakatōhea app, you've all been sent an email with information about how to download that. And there'll be more information in the chat about that and also on your screens as we get closer to the time to using it. We'll also be using menti.com to communicate with everybody and hear your thoughts tonight. So we recommend that you have menti.com either open on a tab in your browser or on a tab in your phone. So I am thrilled to introduce our MC for the evening, Alina Ashimbayeva. Alina is a talented story writer, and through Storyo, the platform that she co-founded, has told the stories of more than 170 women and gender diverse folk in Aotearoa. Nau mai haere mai, Elena. Kia koe te wā.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the space. Before we dive into it, I thought we can open the space with a karakia. So, ki noa tātou. Whakataka te hou ki te uru, whakataka te hou ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hau hu, tihei moriora. Welcome here to the space, folks. Very exciting for a Wednesday, yes, Wednesday evening. Nancy's already introduced me, but I'm going to be your MC for today. I have a lot of ties to tech. I used to work in tech. I kind of still work in tech a little bit. I work at Auckland DHB as an experience designer, and yeah, share stories of women and gender diverse folks through the platform I created, Storyo. And I'm excited to be here today to listen to our awesome 4 speakers. So agenda for today, how we're going to run. We're going to have 4 wonderful people to present around their businesses, the tech for good space. The outcome, I guess, from this talks is just to learn a bit more about some exciting things that are happening. Also hear about maybe challenges, the highlights, and after we're going to go into a panel discussion. So feel free to think up some questions as you listen to people. And after the panel and discussion, we're going to have a little break just to kind of shake ourselves up in the evening, and then we will hear about Whakatumpea app developed by Māori Trust Board in collaboration with School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences at the University of Waikato. So this is kind of our rundown for the evening. Thank you to our sponsors, which is the main sponsor is Trust Waikato. And yeah, let's get into it. We have our first keynote speaker, Jannat Maqbool. Jannat has had an amazing career path in tech. She's a certified public accountant, former CIO. She has masters in digital business and kind of really actively engages in the tech sector in New Zealand. In her current role as an interim executive director for Smart Cities Council. So she went from financial services to supporting digital inclusion to leading Tech Week in Waikato. So yeah, we can't wait to hear what Jannat has to tell us today about and about the magical world of data. Yeah, welcome, Jannat.
Thanks, Alina. I'm going to share my own screen. So if someone could just give me a bit of a signal to say that it's working once it's up, that would be cool.
That's great, Jannat.
Great. All right. Excellent. Fantastic. So thank you firstly again to the organisers for thinking of me for this opportunity to talk about something that I'm very, very passionate about. And again, thank you to the sponsors and obviously other participants. I'm really looking forward to hearing from everybody and the discussion and obviously the wonderful audience. I know what it's like. It's Wednesday evening. It's like leading up to winter. So thank you. Appreciate you making the time, especially considering actually, like Nanese said, there's quite a lot on for Tech Week, which is cool for New Zealand. So I do a few other things as well. So if you're interested, just have a look on LinkedIn. But what I'm here to talk about today is smart cities, towns, and regions. And I often talk about the fact that the towns and regions part is left out of things when you talk about smart cities. But and tech and data. And as I'm going through my presentation, I want you to think of two things. Where are we at in terms of the topic, tech and data for good, and also what's next when it comes to tech and data for good. So just keep those two in mind. If you don't, it's a little bit of homework for you, so you can't just sit back with your popcorn. Have a little bit of a think while you're listening. So this is what we talk about in terms of smart cities, the fact that everybody has a different definition for what a smart city is, and people, that's based on people, but also on place. We often talk about the difference between people and place when it comes to smart cities. This is what we're here for. That is our sort of, I guess, goal, mission, the driving force behind what we do at Smart Cities Council. This is the technical definition of what we actually deliver. So the focus there is on livability, workability, and sustainability. Think about tech, thinking about tech and data, obviously, as well, thinking about the QR code and the fact that actually it's been around for like, I'm pretty sure it's like more than 25 years or so, that the whole QR code concept has been around. And even I think I sort of saw it a little bit, but not really. Leading into the, into COVID, I obviously knew a little bit about it through school, but why did it take a pandemic to get us to actually start using a tool like this that connected people with information and connects people to place and connects place to, what you're doing in that place or where you're at and what you're sort of interacting with. And it just makes life easier. And it's all through your phone, which we've had for a while now, those smartphones, 2007, you can thank Apple for that one. So have a think about, and I don't want to spend too much time on sort of the last couple of years and a bit in terms of COVID, but just have a look and a think back at tech, data, and the COVID experience. So when it comes to tech and data, it's needs to be designed by people for people is what I like to sort of think about. And Sustainable Development Goals, it's 2022, 2030, they're meant to be achieved by. I can tell you we're way off. Everywhere around the world, we're way off, but I quite like to bring things back to those because good has been defined, or has it, in terms of what we want to see in terms of sustainability, obviously, and then our sort of workings and day-to-day interactions with technology and our thinking and thought processes and design processes. A lot of organizations like Smart Cities Council actually find this framework of the SDGs something that's quite useful and relevant to look back at when it comes to this overarching theme of good. Brisbane City Council, for example, and I'm going to run through some examples here of things that I'm aware of, and I tend to generally talk about the same ones. So I've actually spent quite a bit of time just finding ones that that are not talked about as often, or that I find that are quite interesting. So this one here, Brisbane, Queensland, I'm Australian, so I have to talk about Australia at some point. But they won actually the 2020 Readiness Challenge at Smart Cities Council, and some of the things that they did are pretty other cities around the world, including New Zealand, are doing. So they've got an Internet of Things network that spans about 200 or so kilometres. It's probably grown now, and it's been deployed, built in-house by the council. And it's they look at things like water quality and soil moisture and temperature, and just monitoring the environment, but also in Australia, mosquitoes, so monitoring mosquitoes, and obviously water quality as well, if I didn't mention it already. So they've also got smart poles, which is really interesting. And so there are a number of solution providers out there at the moment that are selling this concept of smartphones, because one thing around tech and data, and using tech and data is design and aesthetics. And do you really want your city filled with all these little, like 5Gs coming and is already here in some places? Do we really want all of our view and vision of cities, towns, and regions to be, I guess, flooded with bits and bobs, and rather than actually being behind the scenes? And I often talk about the fact that cities should be just software, and so you should be able to just move around a city, town, and region and expect the tech and data to do what it needs to do to facilitate our engagement. But what these guys did here at Brisbane was they were thinking really about the data. So their whole focus was on data. So the smart poles, for example, capture different information and sort of also correlate to the information that they collect with the IoT sensors. But it enables things like machine vision, and I know some of the other speakers will talk a little bit about this, but it also enables that sort of cross section of data. And so then they actually took all of that data and started informing policy making and thinking about investment in livability, sustainability, and actually prosperity. So they're from day dot, their focus was what was the dividend for the community that would come out of this focus on data, and then how would they go about collecting that data. So moving to somewhere on the other side of the world, in the UK, Nottingham has become the first city apparently to implement an open source IoT platform on scale, basically, for their EV fleet. So this is somewhere in the UK, so it's a little bit, sometimes you might think that it's sort of a bit way off and not relevant to where we are and what we're doing right now, but we can always learn from the fact that these guys here thought about scale from day dot. So again, tech and data for good, it actually links in with the EV fleet and just making that a little bit more workable, I think, for the place that they were considering. But right from day dot, they were thinking scale, immediately thinking scale. It wasn't about piloting and trialing. It wasn't about scaffolding from there, really. It was actually just, this is what we're going to do. And they established a framework around that. Newcastle, again, on the east coast of Australia. So this one here they really engaged, I guess we would call them citizens, in terms of what did they want to see? What were they thinking when it came, for example, to smart cities? They don't really use that term there much, but in terms of technology innovation and what that meant for the community. And so what they've done, and it was actually over COVID, and we've got some, I know of one project here that's very, very similar amongst iwi, but what they wanted to do was they wanted to connect people with where they could get support over the COVID pandemic. So their whole view and vision and focus for Smart City shifted very much to community engagement and what the community wanted to get out of the investment from councils. And of course, lots of councils do the same thing. I was the Smart Cities advisor at Hamilton City Council, and Richard Briggs at the time, his whole focus was smart society. It was like, if we're going to do it, then what does it mean for our people, which is fantastic. Christchurch has, you would have read about this a little bit, but I quite like this one because they've taken the fact that the whole, the city has moved through what has moved through and is still continuing to move through outside of even the pandemic. I mean, the earthquake and obviously everything that happened after that in terms of aftershocks. and this is a bit of work that's actually been over a number of years. So when Teresa used to be the Smart Cities lead there, and now Michael and Grace are involved. But this one has got 150 sensors across the city that actually will, it's called a seismic network. And basically they in real time will provide alerts around earthquakes and earthquake prediction. So that's another one where I like the fact that they've tailored it to place and what it means for them. This one here is my mate Tim. I know you can't see him very clearly. That was the best photo I have of him. So he's developed an app where he goes around and he does audits of actual place, you know, whether it be a campus, whether it be a city, whether it be, he probably hasn't got to the region part yet, but his whole focus from the perspective of what is good and what technology did he have access to and how could he make it happen. So basically he goes and actually does an audit of an area or of a you know, a place in terms of the condition of roads and pedestrian crossings and footpaths and everything else that might be relevant to somebody with a disability trying to navigate through that place. And so then that data is made available via an app. And now he's actually also working with, he's had a baby recently, so it might be a bit delayed, but he's working with the researchers at the Artificial Intelligence Institute and School of Computing Science at the University of Waikato to see how we can actually use machine vision and collect data that way. But basically he's brought it right back to him. Amazing human being. If you get a chance, absolutely talk to Tim. Again, he's brought it back to what it is for him to experience tech for good. This one here is digital twin. I won't talk more about digital twins. I've given so many presentations of late about digital twin, but something to watch out for there is the concept of bringing data together and actually running an analytics over a set of data that brings together different repositories of data. And not only does it enable a visualization, which Wellington uses it for example, in libraries so that the citizens can have a look at what sea level rise would mean to them. But what it enables is simulation. And then what a connected digital twin does, it actually then triggers things back into the physical environment. So again, the opportunity to really think outside the box in terms of people and place and the application of technology for good. So this one here is a livable city digital twin, which involves the University of New South Wales, as well as one of our members, Frontier SI. It's around, and that one is actually focused on the environment and physical conditions in a place, and the fact that actually we need to be thinking about heat and temperature and street shading and walkability, and providing all that information to the people that move about the city so they can better plan routes, and they can better plan, for example, the council can plan where parks should go and where covered areas should be and things like that. And in fact, in New Zealand, the same member of Smart Cities Council is working on a flood resilience digital twin concept just north of Canterbury. And again, bringing that back to what does it mean for place and what does it mean for people when it comes to tech for good. India is focused on healthcare. So big focus there on healthcare through Oracle. It's one of our global members, but a huge initiative there around just in the smart city space again, just around first aid and environmental air quality monitoring, and just a whole database of what is available for their citizens to access healthcare when it comes to those things and more. So the huge focus on healthcare there. Another one, quite simple concept, it's a smart card. It enables, it sort of eliminates fraud when it comes to what's available in terms of giving out food and resources to the you know, the less privileged in Punjab, India, which is where I am from, and so to help curb corruption rather. But all that is a smart card. Absolutely, like we've gone just from digital twins to AI to smart cards. This one here, access to water. So in another town in India, they're actually monitoring the flow of water using valves and using that using data again around there, just to understand the supply of water, the use of water, and actually where is it going, and water pressure, and also monitoring the level of water under the ground, because that is what's most important to the people there of Haryana, which is like a state just east or west of Punjab in India. This one here in Africa, huge opportunity there was education. So smartphone, they delivered the first degree program through a smartphone. So you didn't have to go to a university. And that's my children. So cities and data, what are we hearing? in terms of this data conversation, that actually we need standards. Data is absolutely important. Data is easy to get, which is actually a problem. We need standards. We need frameworks. We need to be activating data rather than just storing data. We need to understand how we should and could and would be allowed to and permitted to share data. And actually the most important, which I heard from someone sort of high up in the Australian government today, because they've got a data strategy, and we were providing some advice on their data strategy, was the fact that citizens need data literacy. So this whole concept of using all of this data, what we need to be focusing on is the education component for our citizen, if that's what we're going to leverage as something around innovation. So that's what cities are hearing, or we're hearing rather from cities. AI, I'm not going to talk much about this one, except for the fact that we had a great presentation from Albert Buffett, who's the director of the Artificial Intelligence Institute at the University of Waikato. And it was really interesting to understand all the different applications of AI, but also into some of the challenges associated with the application of AI and the development of AI. I had a couple of slides on that actually, Nanise, but I'll share them. I'll share the presentation and people can sort of grab those stats around what we heard from that presentation when he was giving that presentation. This one here, so let's not think about, also one of the things that we focus on at Smart Cities is let's not think about smart cities as just being about what you traditionally think around asset and infrastructure and planning and design for citizen movement and mobility and housing and things like that. This one here, the government has just released very recently, the launch was with Minister Clark at the end of March, a research project report on open finance. And that basically means making all the data available from your bank account, say, and all of your sort of financial transaction information with other agencies, and giving consumers control over who can access that data and for what. And what it will enable, and what that report and project actually focused on as a stage one, was financial inclusion. How could we help people have a better relationship with money and actually start to build a financial base solidly, leveraging, technology and data? And that is what was on the agenda for New Zealand when we looked at open banking. The UK did different things, Australia did different things. This is what we wanted to focus on. And it was interesting that all the most of the stuff that we had in the literature review that we could find didn't take the perspective that we were taking here in New Zealand. So there's a real opportunity for us. This one here, I'll just reiterate, data is about collecting it, communicating it and crunching it, so sending it around. But what we need is data leadership. And at the council, we talk about data leadership as being purpose, privacy, security, ethics and governance. That is absolutely what we need. I'll skip over this one a little bit, but in the US, they're basically going to get a ton of money shortly to build back infrastructure better. And what they're saying is we need to stop piloting and we need to just get moving on scale. So when you do tech for good, if you know it's going to work and you know it's exactly what you need, just get on and do it, was the messaging there. Future of Place is our framework that we've delivered for the application of technology and data when it comes to people in place. Check out that if you've got a chance, and it just talks about the relevance of tech and data for smart cities, towns and regions. I mentioned a data strategy in Australia. Well, Southeast Queensland's got their own, and again, I'll share these slides so you can have a look. But I just wanted to bring back to the fact that there's this tone of data and this whole conversation around what tech is really when it comes to tech. What is data, and who has the, what does it mean to actually look and consider and work with data? And also, what does tech for good look like for people and place? Would have heard, I don't know how many of you heard, but yesterday the announcement was made for $20 million to boost the tech sector in New Zealand, and that's part of some of the investment will go into the digital technologies industry transformation plan, which looks like this. So telling the tech story, huge focus on AI and exporting firms, Māori tech as a big focus, skills, data again, and government and capital. So the funding has been announced, and it's for two key parts of this, which is the tech story. And I believe the other one is around, I'll remember in a minute. It's one of the other ones. It's not necessarily, SaaS companies. So that's what the next bit of focus is. Let me just shut the door.
Sorry to interrupt you, Janet. I was just going to say that we're coming to the end of time.
Yeah. No, I was waiting for the ting, but I don't think I heard it. So
I can hear it. Okay.
Yeah, no, this is it. There's one more slide after this. So so this is what we talk about when we're at Smart Cities Council. These are the core messages that we talk about when we talk about smart cities, towns and regions. But what I want to leave you with is not obviously a thank you, but I do say thank you. What I want to leave you with is the two questions that I just asked you right at the start, which is what is, where are we at and what's next, but also the other two elements that I've been talking about through the whole presentation, and I want you to keep in mind as the other panelists, the other speakers present, and we have a panel session I think later, is who defines what tech is and who defines what good is for people in place. So have a think about that, and obviously that underpinning conversation element through all of my presentation, which is let's not forget the data, and that could be a presentation just on its own. But thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody else now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jannat. It was really interesting. And as always, when people do talks, I'm like, oh God, I want to hear more. Made me think a lot about, I currently work at Auckland DHB and then also used to work with the Ministry of Education, and how people, I think, don't realize how much data we hold and how sensitive data can be and how badly it's used, in terms of not misused, but just how it's always an afterthought rather than like designing systems for it. So I'm just, very curious and would love to, maybe during the panel, someone can ask questions about that. So thank you so much, Jannat. We have our next speaker, Tim Ponting. Tim is a self-proclaimed video game veteran with over 30 years of experience in the industry. So Tim initially was an editor and a publisher of magazines and websites, and then in the marketing communications and business development. He's presently helping build a tech and game industry ecosystem in Dunedin as Establishment Director of CODE, the New Zealand Centre of Digital Excellence, an initiative financed by the New Zealand government fund to stimulate the growth of sustainable, thriving game development ecosystem. Tim, the floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, everybody. And get the slides up, that'd be awesome. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, it just brings home quite how old I am, how long I've been in this industry, over 30 years now. I've also been an investor here in New Zealand in studios as well, which I'm very proud of, all of whom are led by a really diverse bunch of creatives. So pretty awesome times, really. So I wanted to start out by getting everybody to think about what gaming means to them, everybody in this lovely virtual room. So for some people, it could be sitting in your PJs playing with your family, or probably more accurately, having your butt handed to you on a plate by your kids. Maybe it's about playing games in lockdown. It helped you stay sane, even though I doubt very much if you actually wore masks while you were sat at home doing it. Perhaps for you, games are just a really convenient babysitter, or something your young teen plays in the bedroom that you really don't understand. Something that causes problems in your whānau, people becoming obsessed, staying up late, not sleeping, and so on. Maybe it's tantrums when you try and take the laptop away from your kids or the iPad. So gaming means different things to everybody, basically. And this, of course, is the archetypal stereotype of the gamer, the lonely male sat in his vest and underpants, eating pizza and waggling his joystick. So what does gaming mean to you? What are the words that you associate with video gaming? And if everybody can log on to Mentimeter, and then you can kind of bring up some of the words that you think about when you're talking about video gaming. So what are the kind of things that you feel? What are the kind of people that you think play video games? So if everybody just wants to start putting those words in, that would be great. Probably the best thing to do is if we go back to the presentation after everyone's had a chance to put menti.com in and use the code, and then I can just talk for a bit about code while you're putting those words in, and we'll come back to them in a minute. So yes, I think possibly we can put those in chat as well, the link, just in case, down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about code and what we've done to build a sustainable game dev ecosystem here. So this is a picture that I drew before I actually started working for code. I replaced my scribbly handwriting with typing, but the drawing is what I drew. We took a very holistic view to building an ecosystem. It's not just about the industry itself. So we kind of started with the industry and worked back from there to the community. So the most obvious intervention is the funding. So we have grants available for people to prototype games. We've got grants available for production. When people have got successful projects in marketplace, we can even help them with scaling funding. But we surround all of this with skilled mentorship, either from within the code team, or we hire mentors who can fill in the gaps and uplift the capability of everyone. But you'll see there's lots of kind of arrows going in and out through the different spiral arms. So, for example, we work very closely with the education sector, with the University in Otago Polytech to develop curriculum to support the local industry. We're working with schools to ensure that there's a really strong pipeline into further education as well. It's also really important to us to address all the underrepresented groups in the industry, which for us has meant putting treaty principles at the heart of everything that we do. We actually kind of started out with what we call kaupapa code and worked out from there. So both, for example, both the local Runanga shareholders in code and very much partners. And we work with quite a few trusted Māori organisations down here in Aotearoa on pathways and also kind of addressing the digital inequities that make it difficult for Māori and Pacifica to join this industry. So to give you an idea, only 3% of workers in video games in Aotearoa are Māori. But over 10% of the funded team members identify as Māori that we've funded so far. And we're also really proud that over 50% of the leads of the projects which we have funded come into diverse categories, underrepresented categories like women, LGBTQIA+, and so on. So if we can go back to Mentimeter and see if we've got some words to play with, that'd be really cool. So exciting. I have no idea what you're going to come up with here, so this is really quite terrifying. Oh, look. Well, I'm very pleased to see that fun is the first word on there. And you know, obviously it's the main reason that we all go into this industry in the first place. But I also see the second most common word in there is addictive, and this is most certainly something which we have to be aware of in the industry. Video game addiction is recognized by the World Health Organization as a thing. It's not particularly well defined, but certainly as game makers and game developers, we have to be very aware of building products which drive addictive cycles, much in common with many of the other kind of modern technology industries and social networks. But some of the other stuff which I think people kind of feel about gaming is that Valheim forever, that's particularly good. But mental health is a term that's on there, and I think this is clearly something that people worry about. They worry about violence in games, but only 42% of players actually play violent games. 62% actually play puzzle games and strategy games. Short attention span, very interesting. One of the things that video games actually do, according to the research, is they enable people to concentrate for longer times rather than shorter times. It's perhaps other elements of teenagers' lives and young people's lives that are driving these shorter attention spans, perhaps social media. So lots and lots of really interesting comments up here. So I'm going to take these away and we can have a look at them. Brain development, there's an awful lot of evidence that shows Things like visual and spatial awareness are improved. Gamers make better drivers, for example. That's been proved. There's a lot of links between resilience to traumatic events with people who follow up playing video games afterwards. So yeah, not entirely bad. In fact, it's a much more positive picture from these words than I was expecting. So quite a lot of the facts that I have here prepared don't really need to be rolled out. So there you go. Anyhow, thank you very much for all of those. If we could get back to the presentation briefly, that would be awesome. So we have this kind of love-hate relationship with games. I think it's safe to say, like they can be great fun, but they can also be a distraction. They can be addictive, and there can be problem behaviors associated with them. But I wanted to share with you just briefly a couple of examples that I love about how games can be really useful and really good, and sometimes in ways that we just don't expect. So on the left here, we have a game called World of Warcraft, which many of you will have heard of. You know, there was a famous movie based on it. In the mid-noughties, there was an incident which is known as the Corrupted Blood incident, which is where gamers who went off to a particular high-level dungeon within World of Warcraft with their trusty beasts alongside them were actually attacked by a boss enemy that infected them with something which spread to nearby allies. And this was a really cool mechanic. Everyone thought it was super cool. But unfortunately, there was a bug which meant that if you went in with a mount and went back to the main World of Warcraft world, you took that with you. And of course, the damage that was dealt was extremely high because this was a high-level dungeon and people would walk around and literally the place was littered with skeletons. It became a huge problem. And eventually 3 weeks later, they gave up trying to fix it and they reset the World of Warcraft servers and started all over again. So very famous. About a year after it happened, some epidemiologists discovered about this and contacted Blizzard and said, you wouldn't happen to have the data anywhere for this. And it turned out Blizzard had kept it all. So the epidemiologists, for the first time ever, had a massive data set about what real people do, albeit in a virtual environment, when they are infected with something which is potentially fatal. So some people would retreat with their friends and hide away. Other people kind of said, screw it, I'm going to die, so I'm just going to behave like I've been behaving and just go on playing the game as usual. So they had this huge data set. And in fact, we know that they've actually gone back and looked at that in the light of the pandemic. So the other thing I wanted to mention was Fold It. Again, this was from the mid-2010s. This is an example where gamers played a puzzle game which allowed them to fold proteins. And there was a particular protein which is an important part of the AIDS infection, which they'd struggled to understand how the protein structure worked. And they put it into Fold It. They've been trying to work out for 10 years, for a decade, how the protein fitted together. And in 15 days, just 15 days, the gamers had solved it and found the lowest energy state for the Mason-Pfizer monkey virus. So it was a big step forward in the treatment of AIDS as a result of a game. So a lot of people ask me what success looks like to me. And I always talk about Gisima Ingatuna, Never Alone, which is a game which was funded by the Cook Inlet Tribal Council, who are an indigenous people from Alaska. And instead of spending their money on a language program for their rangatahi, they decided to fund a video game. And it was a $3 million bet. It was a very big bet that they took, but it was an enormous success. It's an amazing game. I really recommend everybody who can plays it. But it's been a huge success as well. So the studio is now owned by the Inupiat people, and they're making a sequel. So it's an enormous success story. And I'd love to see some of the Indigenous studios here. Metia Interactive are working on a pitch for a game called Guardian Maya, which looks absolutely amazing. So just search that one up, and we really hope that one comes to fruition. Aotearoa is a game being made by Aotearoa Interactive that was actually funded by Code in its first round, and that's a story of an albatross returning to be reunited with its chick at Aotearoa Head. So just to wrap up, the last two games I just wanted to mention, these are both funded by Code and good examples of how games can bring benefit. One is Co-Driver, which is intended to drive down the level of accidents among our young folk who are learning to drive, a virtual reality simulator that is gamified and teaches them about awareness on the road. And the other is Nutri Islands, which is really cool. It's a time travel adventure for kids where they're in a future where everyone is fat and everybody is unfortunately very unhealthy and sick, and they travel back in time to teach people healthy eating habits and healthy habits that are going to change the future. So there, it's just a quick roundup of some of the cool stuff that's going on in this space, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the creative industries here do, both with Code funding and just in this space in general. Thank you very much.
Jazz hands for Tim. Thank you so much, Tim. That was fascinating, and yeah, it's interesting to see and to hear from you. Traditionally very Western and ecosystem, I guess, growing and increasing into representation and sort of figuring out how to divest that power, which is really cool. I actually studied biomedical sciences, and we used some of the gene coding and sequencing games to outsource gene sequencing to people to play with, which is quite cool. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Amber Taylor. Amber is a co-founder and CEO of Ara Journeys, a mobile game company that blends digital world with Te Ao Māori, inspired by and drawing on Motoranga Māori. Ara's award-winning games use immersive technologies and artificial intelligence to promote connection, education, and exploration. Amber is an advocate for grown Māori and Pacifica talent and diversity in the tech sector. We're stoked to have her here with us to share the story. Welcome, Amber.
Kia ora, great to be here tonight. Is my presentation coming up? Right, here we go, and I should be able to click through. Perfect. Just before I kick off, bit of housekeeping. There's no sound on my videos. I took them off because I don't have a lot of time, so it's nothing wrong with your volume. They're actually all muted. So, tēnā koutou e ngā rangatira, e ngā reo, e ngā waka, e homa. Ka nui te mihi ki a koutou mō tō koutou, mō tō painga ki te tautoko, i ngā kaupapa e pā ana ki tēnei hui. E mihi ana ki a koutou ara o Impact Hub, mō tō mahi nui, mō tō tono mai ki au ki te kōrero. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko waio, ko au te uri o Ngāti Whātua, Ngā Pui Te Raroa, me Ngāti Mutunga Te Atiawa hoki, e tupu ake i Tamaki Makaurau, he kai whakahaere au i Ara Journeys, ko Amber Taylor tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi everyone, it's really great to be here with you this evening and to share this space to learn and kōrero and build these really important relationships around a topic that's really close to my heart, tech for good. I want to give a big thank you to the Whānau Impact Hub for the opportunity to be here and share a little bit about our story and our background and what we've been up to in this space. My name is Amber Taylor. My whānau hail from the top of the North Island, Te Tai Tokiro, down to Taranaki. I currently live here in Auckland, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Ara Journeys. Now, I co-founded Ara Journeys in 2018 with Dr. Isaac Warbrick, and since then, we've been on a mission to build a distinctly Māori tech company to promote health and wellbeing through a Te Ao Māori lens. Tonight, I'll share with you a little bit about our company, our work, and how we use tech for good. And I don't have a lot of time, so I am kind of going to rush through a bit of things, but you should get the gist of everything that we've been up to. So Other Journeys is a digital technology company that's combining immersive technologies, artificial intelligence and gamification to build mobile games that are helping solve some of the world's biggest problems. We're 100% Māori owned and believe that by focusing on the interface between traditional knowledge, our mātauranga knowledge, and technology, our digital experiences are enhancing the relationship between people and the land. This evening, I'm going to show you a few of our educational games that are here in Aotearoa and internationally that are improving the health and well-being of our people. We're preserving Indigenous knowledge and we're tackling some of the world's biggest climate change issues. So how do we use our games to improve the health and well-being of people? Well, meet Manu. Manu's the world's first fully bilingual English te reo Māori augmented reality character. He's a 21st century wayfinder who takes you on a journey throughout the land to learn about the importance of the environmental signs in relation to our maramataka, the Māori lunar calendar. Key word in that phrase there is exploring the land. All our games are designed to get you outside and moving. They're not designed for you to be sit inside in front of a screen. We want you to look away from the screen and to be present in your environment. Health experts around the world have already reported the value in spending time in nature. Clinical studies have shown us that this helps reduce blood pressure, lowers cortisol levels, it improves your concentration and memory, and it helps lower stress and anxiety. Therefore, our games are not focused on solely driving dopamine, which is that addictive game of gratification feeling you get with other games. Instead, we focus on encouraging the here and now hormones. These hormones are associated with social connection, like serotonin and oxytocin. So we really want the people playing our games to feel happy and to feel good about themselves. How are we preserving Indigenous knowledge? This is our game Tūwhiri. And Tūwhiri really works like Pac-Man, where you, our player, become Pac-Man, and it's your job to spread around the communities, travel, visit our hidden cities, and learn the rich stories that are there, provided by our mana whenua, our local people, in relation to that location. The cool thing with this game is that we give you digital rewards, and these rewards are designed to be spent in-house. So we want you to go out, visit other New Zealand owned and operated businesses, and redeem your digital rewards. Tūwhiri is designed to capture the stories our tupuna left us. These are the stories that teach us about the importance of our relationship with the land to live a sustainable and balanced life. And I think that's a little bit about what Janet touched on earlier with her kōrero around connections of place. These stories that we're capturing within Tūwhiri, they really help us to connect to the land that our ancestors once walked on. So we have a better understanding of who we are and where we come from. The stories that these are the stories that we may never hear again because our elders, our kaumātua, they're passing away. So we're slowly losing them. But this is why we designed Tūwhiri. We want Tūwhiri to preserve all these stories for our future generations. Research among Indigenous people has highlighted the value of cultural connection, and this is a driver for lifestyle change. This is linked to the positive outcomes in areas such as health and education. And that's something that we're really focused on. Climate change. What are we doing in that space? Well, Aotearoa Rangers is a game that's designed to transform the millions of gamers around the world into citizen scientists. It's an ecosystem building game. We collect real environmental data to build and care for a digital island. The data collected is then used by researchers and professors around the world. Our research and professors who are working on solving some of the largest climate change problems we have today. The cool thing with Aotearoa Rangers is that it weaves Te Ao Māori throughout gameplay. So this provides a new way of understanding environmental systems and teaching players how to care for and protect them. Our solution to data collection with Aotearoa Rangers adds value to citizen science because it's ensuring the inclusion of people who are already excluded from science literacy and education. And therefore we're providing a data collection that is diverse and inclusive. And that's something we're really proud of with that build. So how do we know we're using tech for good? Well, all our technology solutions must contribute to one of the SDGs. These 3 alone contribute to 8 of the 15, and we're looking forward to building more platforms and ticking off a few more of these SDG goals. In addition to this, we offer internships and tech apprenticeships for Māori and Pacifica interested in a career in tech. We really want to help grow home talent and upskill our rangatahi so that there are more Māori and Pacifica representation in the technology sector. Through the Ministry of Education, we're working within the schools to teach students how to build games. We're teaching them about ethical gaming and the value of zero-sum games. We're creating learning and teaching resources for our kura kaupapa Māori, which is something that we're also really proud of because it's bringing new technologies into our kura and exposing our rangatahi to the kind of work that we're doing. We connect with Indigenous groups around the world to collaborate and contribute to growing the representation of Indigenous in tech at a global level. And we've been recognised locally and internationally for our mahi in education, smart cities, health and wellbeing. We're walking the talk and we're doing it under the guidance of our tūpuna. Kia whakatōmuri te haere whakamua. My past is my present, is my future. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Amazing, Amber.
Sorry,
just hands. That was so wonderful. As you can see, lots of comments and messages about how this work is so exciting. The last two talks, actually, I'm just thinking of my previous workplace, Network for Learning. We collected data on how many hours and what websites people spend on gaming in schools. So all 800,000 students in a day, what they do and stuff. And there was so much sort of data around it, but so much interesting like narratives and stuff. So I just see these beautiful connections with changing the way we see gaming. Yeah, thank you so much, Emma. That was really awesome. Cool, folks. We have our last speaker before we go on a tiny break and then a panel. Our last speaker is Kane O'Donnell. He's Director of Innovation at Aware Group. It is their mission to enhance humanity through the use of artificial intelligence. Aware is a gold partner of Microsoft, but they also work on amazing local projects here in New Zealand. One of the projects was to help preserve Maori dolphins by developing a tool for facial recognition to identify individual dolphins. So I'm super excited to hear Kane speak to the role of artificial intelligence can play. Hi, Kane.
Hello. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming along tonight. So the introduction, that kind of covers enough about me. So the Director of Innovation and at Aware Group, I'm pretty privileged the projects we get to work on. Sometimes it's hard to believe what we get paid for. Working on the Maui 63 dolphin is a good one. So I'm just going to kind of run you through some examples of the sort of thing that I do, because reflecting on it, a lot of the things have that tech for good element. I am going to come from more of a sciencey sort of tech background. I'm less qualified to talk about what is good and not just on the tech angle, but maybe we'll get to some of that at the end. So we're just recently rebranded. Our purpose is to enhance the lives of people and organizations through the ethical and sustainable use of emerging technologies. Now that kind of sums up tech for good in a T, which is pretty cool. And so we've kind of always done that in the past, and I'll kind of go through some examples, but we are looking to do more of that. We've kind of got a goal of one philanthropically funded project, because that kind of helps us figure out how do we get something that's good, but also we can kind of put bread on the table. So some examples that I just wanted to run through. So I've got kind of 6 examples here, some of the stuff that we have done, and then I'll kind of leave a few questions before we get into the panel after our last speaker. So tech for environmental good. So Maui 63 is the drone that you can see there. So that's Tane. He and his team came up with the idea of surveying the entire Maui 63 dolphin population, which was 63 at the time, hence Maui 63. Because the plane that they were using, I just don't think they could get funding for it anymore. So that drone that you can see there, I think it's got a 4-meter wingspan. It'll fly for 8 hours on gas at 140 k's an hour, and they can survey the entire population and the entire territory. And he's created the artificial intelligence to actually look down and spot these dolphins. And they've got some cool examples of that working. And there's lots of fun stories around that drone. But it was funded by MPI, and it's proved to work. Unfortunately, the population has gone down, but they kind of want to use this data to be able to monitor the population, and they're working with the fisheries to where do we actively fish and things like that. So it's a really cool one. We work with them to actually identify the dolphins. So when the drone spots a dolphin, it'll actually go into a circling pattern, and then we can zoom in on the fin. And yeah, we did facial recognition on dolphins, which was pretty interesting. Not something I would have thought I would have done. The top right there is a project with Genesis Energy. So around Ruapehu, they collect a lot of water, obviously for the hydro schemes. And a big problem that they have is their intakes often get blocked with weed and such. And that means the water's kind of wasted, not an effective use of it, etc. So that solution, we just use computer vision. So you can kind of see us there. We put up a camera looking down at those intakes. And it was a relatively simple problem to say, is the intake blocked or not? And then they could send out someone to fix it as needed, where the previous approach was kind of someone driving around once a week, looking through all of them, which is kind of a waste of time, and often, it would block immediately after the person left, etc. So the one litter intelligence there, this was with Sustainable Coastlines. So they are kind of a citizen science organization looking at kind of surveying what rubbish do we actually have on the beaches. And this was helping them with the process at the end. We kind of classify all the rubbish. So is it a bottle cap? Is it plastic? Is it styrofoam? Those sorts of things. And so they've already got an app, and this was adding a bit of computer vision to it. So we could actually try and say, that is a bottle cap, and furthermore say, that's 50 of them, because that data can then be used to drive a bunch of decisions. So, if all your waste is coming from bottle caps, you would act in a certain way to mitigate that versus, chippy packets. Is it local waste or not? All those sorts of things. So there's a lot of insights that can kind of come from that. The other ones we've got, so Tech for Social Good. This one with me wearing a VR headset was an interesting one. Basically, we work with Ryman to have a sort of virtual sporting event across their villages. So I think there are 40 villages, and we ran it. I'm not sure it was all of them, but the majority of them, we had various events from kind of walking and swimming, where participants could use their local facilities and compete against the other villages around the country, obviously with a COVID lens on, not wanting to travel too much. So this one in particular was virtual bowls. So I was in Hamilton, and with one team, and the other team was down in Christchurch. Was we had playoffs, etc., and that was the final, and the Hamilton team won. I'm pretty sure. It's been a while, but this one, in terms of social good, was enabling the residents to actually connect and engage. So when you went into lockdown, it is lockdown at the villages, just because of COVID. So this enabled them to still kind of get out and have that purpose and engage in community. The top right was it's an interesting one, kind of touching on what Jannat said. It's a device that we've been working on just to count sort of pedestrians and different modes of traffic around the cities. So that's usually you can do pedestrians and cyclists, but we've kind of added on scooters and even dogs, things like that. What's interesting is, you move from raw data, which is your CCTV, to this, which kind of gives you a count of how many people are using, a different area. And then you can also get obvious insights out of that. So one of them that we found was, it's all well and good talking about building cycle paths, but half the cyclists just use the footpath anyway. They don't use the cycle path. So it becomes less of a problem of put more cycle paths down. It's how do you encourage people to actually use the cycle paths that are there? So that's, obviously a pretty big impact around how we use our cities effectively, and I guess enjoyably as well. The last one there, Spot, the robot dog we had. This one was the Christchurch Cathedral. So there are a few reasons. One is it's pretty dangerous to go in. I think we were the first ones, aside from sort of drones, to have been in since it was basically locked up pretty immediately after the earthquakes. So there was a general kind of inspection. You can see he's kind of got a little LiDAR system on his back, so doing scans, collecting data. There was also a specific purpose, which was around there was some artifacts in there that they kind of wanted access to, but obviously with a health and safety lens, you can't really send people in. So I don't know if this one quite fits Tech for Social Good, but I kind of slipped it in there. But it was, again, that health and safety angle, and also kind of exploring and doing things that we wouldn't normally be able to do for, you know, a treasured artifact. So those are just some of the things that we're doing, and kind of reflecting on that. It's really cool that we get to do that. I mean, it's really cool that I get to do that. It's great. I'm the team, but also that we're doing that in Hamilton, and we're doing some things like this. Like, there are a lot of cool possibilities, and that's kind of where I want to get to next, is some of the more exciting things that I've seen. So the one on the left there, that's Ameca, A-M-E-C-A. You should Google her. The YouTube videos are really creepy. She's almost beyond. What's the effect when you see a robot kind of looks like a human? She looks really human. And yeah, there you go. As you can see from that expression, so she can change expressions and all that. Now, I think that's pretty exciting. There are a lot of things that you could do with that. Whether or not it's good, maybe get to later, but that is pretty impressive technology. The little chip that you can see there is something called an analog computing. So these are different ways of doing computing, full stop. So when you want to run computer vision, you know, you can run it through your typical computer CPU, or there's these kind of optimized chips that do it. But in this case, it's actually a completely different type of computing, and the short answer is that they're really power efficient, and they're a lot more powerful, and you don't kind of have to program them. And so those, I think, are going to be a pretty neat piece of tech, and could be used for kind of doing a lot of good, I think, because they are so low power. A little clam friend there. I just think it's exciting, the kind of combining, you know, IoT and nature. So in this case, these particular clams, they only feed when the water's really clean, and as soon as any sort of pollutants, they close up. It doesn't give you quantified measures of exactly what was the pollutant, but it allows you to measure really accurately, is the water clear. And they were actually using these, I think, to divert flows in a power plant or something like that. The last one is just it's a new type of camera that's coming out. They're event cameras. So they have all these cool optical properties. They go really fast and all these sorts of things. But the key thing is they run on apparently 1 milliwatt with a spiking neural net behind them. So you can be doing computer vision like on a coin cell forever, you know, on a device the size of your thumbnail. So it's still kind of emerging tech, but it opens up a whole lot of possibilities for what could we do, right, in the city. Like, you could have a camera on every mailbox. Now, what would you do with that? You know, that's a good question, but it sort of shows the possibilities. On that note, what's good? I'm not going to answer that question, but here's a couple of examples where I think you can have good and bad. So the one on the left, that's Starlink. So a lot of people know about Starlink. It's really good. Going to put 10,000 satellites up, get connectivity across the world. But you know, it's kind of messing with my skyscape, right? And there's a bunch of astronomers that are pretty peeved as well. What about using AI to protect native birds? You know, Predator-free 2050. That's a great goal. And here you see someone's managed to detect cats. You know, we can wipe out cats to save the birds. So that's arguably a good thing. But I'm not, as certain political parties have discovered, wiping out cats is maybe not popular. The third one there is, thanks, Janet. It's generative art. So this is called DALL-E from OpenAI. They literally type in a bit of text, which is I think they typed in something like an astronaut riding a horse in space or something, and it created this art from scratch. Now that's really cool from a creative angle. There's a lot of possibilities. We've got some gamers here. I mean, you could render your entire environment with something like this. Immersive art, all these sorts of things. But, you know, it also means it's really hard to tell what's true or not. So someone could be generating completely fake news in like a really scary way. The last one is, what's the Elon Musk one's Neuralink. So this is where you can kind of put some chip in a brain, and you can kind of control a computer with your brain neural interface, etc. Really cool, because you could enable people with disabilities to do things that they haven't been able to do before. But it also kind of feels pretty creepy as well, and you know, you can see things going wrong. So this is a little bit, you know, 5-10 years down the track, but I kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of sort of what I sort of see as exciting and scary. And when we're talking about tech for good, I think we kind of need to keep these things in mind as well. Like, you know, things are coming, and if we're not aware of them, big corporates certainly are, and sort of that. So thanks, Denise. that's me.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Let's do just hands for Kane. That was wonderful, Kane. Thank you so much for your talk. It's so interesting to hear. You know, sometimes we walk around sort of go about our days without thinking about all these things that exist out there that, as you said, without questioning what does good mean and how who's looking after it, who's paying for it, who is like literally paying for it with money and ethically and stuff like that. So
tricky one.
Yeah, very tricky. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, everyone. We're going to have a few-minute break, I think around maybe 2-3 minutes. So I would definitely encourage you to get up and stretch up and move around, have a drink of water, and we'll come back to do a panel discussion and hear more about Waiata app that you might, if you haven't yet, download. We're going to have a holding slide just now with the instructions how to download it. So yeah, we'll be back in 2-3 minutes. See you soon. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Time in this pointing. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Elena.
Cool. We're coming back now. Everyone had a good stretch. A glass of water. Cool. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the speakers. We are now entering our second part of the evening. We're going to have a panel discussion with our speakers, and then we're going to have another presentation about Waiata app. So for the panel, how the panel is going to work, we're going to kick off the panel with a couple of questions that we have. And then while the panel is speaking, we invite you to go to minty.com. So you've already gone to the word cloud, enter the code. I think it's 7771532. Yes, perfect. It's in the chat. and where you can post your questions, and you can look at other people's questions and upvote them if you like those questions to be asked, and we will be choosing from the top voted questions to ask the panel. So please don't hesitate. Cool. Okay, so while people are doing that, we're going to kick off with a few questions, and the way we're going to do a panel is we're going to just pass on to anyone. So please feel free to just speak up from the panel. We don't have to go through every speaker for the answers, but just whoever has something they want to share, please do. We had a question that a few we wrote up beforehand, and one of them is something that I'm really curious about. When it comes to tech sector, the most kind of big known players in the tech sector are heavily profit growth driven companies. And when we create social impact, or we talk about tech for good, whatever that good means, but social impact is primary goal. Finding good talent, competitive salaries, quite a big challenge. Research takes time because you're trying to do something really good. Profits are not comparable to like a very capitalist sort of growth, big players. So things are generally a bit slower and harder. So how can we, I would love to hear from anyone, how can we support our social impact space? What needs to shift in terms of funding structures or how we think about it? Again, being in the very capitalist-driven society with growth and at the core of the model, how do we run these tech ventures that are for good? I would love to hear if anyone has any thoughts around that. Please just unmute yourself. Yeah. Okay, you're smiling.
I want someone else to go first.
I don't mind going first on this subject, simply because this is a really major problem that we face. One of the reasons we set up Code in Dunedin was because of the hospital rebuild, and it's a digital hospital, a digital-led hospital that's being built, and we wanted to build a games for health program around it. And I know from my investments in the UK space and from an awful lot of research that we did around it that there's a real tussle between the entrepreneurial approach to games for good and the kind of more, let's say, clinician or market consumer-led approach. So you find that a lot of games for good and a lot of games for health don't work out too well because entrepreneurs have a completely different set of requirements, many of them. It's about raising money to make money, and that doesn't always deliver the impact. So even though they're often very interested in social impact, they'll cherry pick the things where they can do good and make money. And those aren't always the things that really need the attention. So where Games for Health is concerned, we were very, very interested in working out how to put the outcomes first and to choose the outcomes that we could support rather than choose the business model or the companies or the delivery first.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's something that's why we wanted to ask the question, because I see often in the tech industry when it comes to even, we talk about VCs that are for good, yet they always choose the ones that can grow, 100 times and do good. And it's very, very not a common thing in this world, Yeah, anyone else have any thoughts on that? I would love to add any. Jannat, Kane?
I'm probably going to avoid giving too many opinions because I'm just not, it's not really my area. Just, I guess, pointing to some examples that I guess I have seen working. So Microsoft, we mentioned that we partner with Microsoft. They're a good example. They've got lots of for good kind of practices. So there's the AI for good, there's AI for Earth, there's all these kind of sorts of things where they will give money and fund a lot of cool things. So the Maui 63 fund, Maui 63 was actually through them. I think the Sustainable Coastlines one as well. So they can provide that kind of that funding where it's less, VC, they're not expecting a great return. Obviously they're expecting certain things, which is always a balance. Another one is sort of philanthropy. That'll only go so far. I know there's kind of quite a lot of that, at least in the Waikato area. And I think there are a lot of people in the tech industry that want to do well. I mean, we're in that space. It's just really hard to balance that with making a profit, right? So there's you can do a bit, but ultimately if the company kind of can't survive, then you're not doing good for your employees. So kind of always got to balance that. And there's obviously a big role of government, etc. So I don't have any answers. That's just, I guess, some thoughts from me. Sorry.
Thank you, Kane. Janet?
I was going to come at it from, I'm involved in a pilot here in the Waikato that we're slowly fleshing out to ensure there's more diversity in tech, but like in the sense of neurodiverse and you know, the disabled community and vision impaired and English as a first language and first person in the family to go to uni and all that sort of stuff. So that whole entirety of diversity. But the interesting thing is when we're developing that from we're trying to better align demand and supply. So if they're coming out and they're graduating, why are they not being picked up, you know, for a job? And as we were sort of defining the criteria, we've got a researcher working on interviewing the, you know, from both sides, that in terms of the students that are available, that are graduating, and employers that are onboarding, and why they're not, and what the experience is and things like that. And it was really interesting that one of the insights was that actually, and after the internship, there's an offer obviously there for employment, but actually we had to talk to the demand side to say, well, sometimes the student might not want to stay with you, or the graduate doesn't want to stay with you. And in fact, they don't pick you as a company, and they don't pick your internship potentially as well, because you're not offering that impact from a social and environmental perspective. And so I'm hoping that the talent that's coming through can actually drive a lot of that change. The other thing is, and they're in a good position to do so. And the other thing is, big corporates now in New Zealand have to make climate change disclosures, which covers environmental, social, and governance data. So as that's going to slowly start coming down. Data is becoming more and more prevalent, so we'll be able to measure impact way more effectively. And I just feel those things are going to have to come together, and for a number of other reasons as well. Corporates are going to have to toe the line, and that includes tech. So, but I feel like there's a big opportunity in terms of the talent pipeline.
Amazing. Cool. Oh,
I just
Amber?
want to jump in and add something in here, because I think that what we really need to do is move away from pushing entrepreneurs into investors or VCs in that space. We haven't raised a cent in investment. We've been self-funded from get-go. And that's due to really smart business models, advisors in our corner that are helping us grow in this space. So there's other ways of doing business rather than rushing out the gate and getting an angel investor or getting a VC to back you. And having that freedom from that allows us to be able to work the way that we want to work, you know, to achieve the goals and values that we have set up for our company without worrying about the return on investment for some third party that doesn't care about what we're doing.
Yes. Thank you so much, Amber. That's a great point around different. I guess it kind of probably adds more challenges to someone who is, let's say, has an idea and passionate about something, and like finding out sustainable business model is another whole layer of a challenge.
We started this company with no money, haven't put a single cent personal money into it. We actually raised some money. We were funded from a community organisation based on this really flash PowerPoint that showed the idea, and from them we built the prototype, and from there we got the contracts. Amazing.
I'm going to jump on.
That can be done.
Yeah. Thank you, Amber. I'm going to jump on some other questions that we have coming through. So we have a question: how do we encourage our children into a career as a game creator? To ask Amber and to ask Tim. One of you can go. Amber, would you like to go first?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. How do we encourage our children into a career as a game creator?
Let them play games, educational games. Give them a variety of games to play in. And then see where the creativity takes them. I know that when we're doing the work within schools with the creatives in schools that Ministry of Ed roll out, you know, a lot of these students, they're playing games and they know that they can make them, but they don't know how to start. And so I think that's that first step. If there's an interest in creating games, let them explore it and find out where their passions lie, what kind of games they want to build, and then find out the next steps around study or doing after school projects or whatever's available in the area.
Yep, I wholeheartedly support that approach. I think sometimes it's difficult because it varies so much from school to school and area to area. So in Dunedin, we've been supporting game dev clubs. They use Game Fruit. It's for kids who are at roughly intermediate age. But one of the things that is really important is that kids understand what goes into making a game, because a lot of kids rule themselves out. They're like, oh, well, they don't realize that programmers are actually the minority of people in most game studios. There's more artists, for example. There's musicians required. There's people needed to organize everybody. There's creative people who do the game design who aren't necessarily that technical. So the other thing I think that is important is, if you are the parent of kids who are interested in game dev, tell the school, tell the teachers, and see if the teachers can get some support. We know from the work that we've done here in Aotearoa with some of the secondary school teachers that gaming is a great way to engage the kids in their Digitech curriculum. In the old days, it used to be websites, because everyone was like, I want to make a website, but that's no longer cool, right? No one, like, websites are everywhere. They're like a piece of paper, but games are always cool. So it's actually a really good thing for teachers if they can take those first steps. And if they're using tools like Game Fruit, they don't have to dive into Unity or Unreal or anything complex, and they can very easily produce curriculum for the kids for themselves. So.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we have, I'm looking at my phone, by the way, to see the questions that are coming through. This question probably, we'll see if it's maybe the last one or not. We see how time goes. But what do you think is the biggest ethical challenge you're facing in your role at the moment? Something maybe, and that's something that we were going to ask in our panel anyways, is maybe something that you are aware of that you want to do either better in and are figuring out, or just a challenge you are facing ethically yourself?
I can jump in. I'm actually relatively lucky that I don't have any particular ethical challenges, because we're in a lucky position where we don't have to make those hard decisions. We have been able to say no to quite a few things, and they've always aligned with kind of what I want to say no with. So I think this comes back to the how do we encourage tech for good, because ultimately we have the finances that we can say no. If we weren't in that position, I imagine some of those decisions would have to be a lot harder. So again, money versus decision.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Danny?
Kia ora tātou. I'm Danny Paruru. I'm from Waikato here. I've been invited to be a part of the panel, but I'm presenting next. So we're talking about the Waikato app. But I just wanted to jump in here just quickly about coming from an iwi perspective, I guess. Just talking about some ethical challenges, from I guess a Māori whakaaro or perspective, the big question is, how much can technology support the sustainability of our culture, our language and our identity? And it is a challenge because, when we're trying to teach, trying to share our mātauranga with our own people or with the community, most of our people want to do it in traditional ways, face to face. We have to be at the marae, but we have to think outside the box now to ensure that, our communities, our iwi are actually have access to the learning that is available to them. And I think it's a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, about the Waikato app. So it's an ethical issue because it does challenge our traditions, but we do see a lot of value in technology to support our aspirations.
Thank you, Danny. Amber?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges with everything we've done to date has been Māori data sovereignty. What are we doing with data? How are we protecting that? How are we protecting that for our iwi and for our people? And really building out the frameworks that sit in behind these platforms we're creating, so that our people still have control over that data and like have a say in that space.
Thank you, Amber. Janet, maybe.
My one just goes back again to I think, and I try and do that with, you know, I'm similar to Kane. I get to say no to things as well, not just at Smart Cities Council, but just in terms of my job and where I get to be employed. And thankfully, something cool always comes along, and I'm grateful for that. But I feel there's two things. It's that definition of what is good, and Kane touched on that as well, and a couple of other people as well. And so bringing it back to that person or people, or, you know, the community being able to have that literacy, that digital literacy and that data literacy. And I know, for example, from a smart cities perspective, that I know the solution providers, and I know the, you know, the conversations that go on, and I know the work that goes on to try and sort of, I know from a bigger picture perspective where the insights are going to be useful down the track, and, you know, why the decisions are made, why they're made. But our push really through Smart Cities Council is to have that education component, both for the councils that are speaking with solutions providers and for the solution providers, but most importantly, to talk about smart cities in terms of readiness and in terms of a roadmap where it's the people are at the center. The people are at the center, and so that is my thing, is people need to have digital and data literacy, and I talk about them in they're separate things. So yeah, that is the thing that I battle with, and I make sure my children understand about data as well, because they're going into a world where, you know, even now a lot of what they do is there's data coming from it that somebody has access to, and I need them to understand that.
Thank you so much, Janet. Yeah, you know what I'm reflecting to from all of your answers is that how many aspects there are to good and what that might mean around, you know, whether it's the way we are financing a company, the way we've structured it, even if it's maybe the outcomes are what the outcomes are, but within the company, how are you hiring? How are you, you know, looking at your data sovereignty? Who is benefiting? There are so many aspects, and I think sometimes people feel like there is, you know, we can almost forget that even for-profit companies can actually be really ethical in the way they conduct themselves, and we don't really pay attention sometimes to all the other aspects that can happen. So yeah, all your answers really what are that. So I think we have maybe time for one more question. We have a question around, if you were the government, what would you spend $560 million on in tech for good space? What is the most promising area to make our society fit for the future through tech? Obviously, you know, when we ask anything for the most or the one way, it's a bit hard to answer, but whatever comes to your mind, you know, something that you think we could invest through tech in your area. Maybe I can start with Danny.
Kia ora. I think just the investment in growing our local industries. So coming from a small community, again, technology hasn't always been the most popular choice for many of our people that come through college and then going on to university. But there's the opportunity to grow our local primary industries. So we have kiwi fruit, forestry, we're starting up this big agriculture industry, and everything requires some level of technology and digital technology as well. So I think, you know, from a small regional perspective, perhaps funding going into growing technology in those spaces would be really awesome.
Anyone else?
I don't know, 560 million. I don't know if there's a specific reason for that number. People are trying to figure it out by the looks.
It did say 560 million in tech for good instead of cash for clunker.
Yeah, I see the announcement yesterday.
Yep, that's the one.
I don't know. I don't have any immediate ones. For me, it's more of a talent thing. So the guy who founded Callaghan Innovation, I can't remember his name, but I think his motto was always make New Zealand a place where talent wants to live. And I think there is something where, you know, why can't New Zealand be the world leaders in artificial intelligence or some of these, you know, these cool things that are coming out? You know, they're always done in Silicon Valley. You know, why can't we have that? It's a really hard thing to do and build. But I think when you've got the right people and talent to call on, I think a lot of stuff kind of falls out of that. And you get a lot of talent that, you know, wants to do good as well as just sort of make money. So I know there are sort of some initiatives, but that would be one thing I would be pretty keen on seeing happen. I don't know how it would happen. but I think it would be great if it did.
I know that 560 million sounds like a big number, but actually it'll just get consumed really quickly and we probably won't make much of an impact. But what I would say is back to something that Kane mentioned there, and I wanted to mention it before as well, that we don't know how good we are. Like I feel like most New Zealanders don't know the opportunity that's here for New Zealand. One example, and it reminded me, Kane, is that we've developed software at the University of Waikato through in AI, like in machine learning, that actually was used in universities for decades around the world to teach the world machine learning, and we don't even know how good we are. And the software, I think, is downloaded like 10.5 million times and since the 90s, and it's still being downloaded hundreds of thousands of times every month. So I think we need to focus on that. I know that the tech story is doing a big job to sort of sell us as a to attract talent and investment, but I feel we need to turn around and talk to ourselves and our youth and for generations to come. And the only other thing that I would say is, and I remember I tabled the idea at a board meeting, one of the boards that I'm on, and I just said we need better criteria for all tech awards. We need a better framework for tech and how do you measure tech and what the sort of tech that we want, so that actually that framework actually is pitching what we want things to be. And we're just not there. We're just not there. We've got too many awards things. We've got too much recognition for things that actually we shouldn't be recognizing. And so what we need is an overarching framework that targets where we want to be and where we have the opportunity to keep being, because we are already there as a country.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Janet. Yeah, that must be our last answer. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's interesting again, right? Reflecting back on the whole living in a capitalist world and what kind of things that we reward, what things that we aspire to versus how we structure our companies, the way we run things. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I feel like 20-minute panel isn't enough, but we'll stop there. And we'll finally introduce Danny, who was on our panel, but we haven't introduced him in the beginning. I hope you all had a chance to download Waikato app. We will kind of switch gears at the moment. So we've heard from our speakers, we did a panel. Let's do it a little breath to switch tech. We're gonna have our sort of closing presentation around Waikato app. This app was the result of the close collaboration between the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board and the School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences at the University of Waikato. The Waikato app is an example of how technology can be used to help preserve the songs, to preserve the history of an iwi, and for the community to learn more about app development. By sharing the experiences, the speakers hope to inspire other iwi and communities to create their own app. So some wonderful notes to and learnings to kind of start wrapping up our beautiful evening with. May I present to you the speakers from the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board. We have Anita, Whakatohea Maurua Education Strategy, Danny from the iwi Development Manager, and we have Anika, who is from the University of Waikato, the head of school, Computing and Mathematical Sciences. Oh, long name. Welcome, you three. Can't wait to hear from you.
Awesome. Kia ora tātou katoa. No reira, he mihi anō kia koutou, ngā kai whakarite o tēnei kaupapa, tino arohanui kia koutou. Me ngā kai kōrero katoa, ko kōrero hea ngā kōrero no reira tēnā koutou. Just want to say, yeah, thank you again for the amazing presentations that have already been given this evening, and we're privileged to be here. So as I mentioned before, Danny Pairuru is my name. I'm the iwi Development Manager for the Whakatohea Māori Trust Board, and we're very new to the technology scene. However, I look forward to the future relationship building with other people, but especially with the University of Waikato. So we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves before we start our presentation. Over to you, Anita.
Kia ora koutou. Ko Anita Kurei Paruru tōku ingoa. My name is Anita Kurei Paruru. I am currently an advisor for our Whakatohea Maurua Education Strategy, and also I have recently become a member of our Whare Pukapuka, our library, Te Tauhuhu o Te Rangi. I also work in archives. A lot of mahi around preservation of our Whakatohea histories. Kia ora.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Anika tōku ingoa. So my name is Anika Hinsa, and as said before, I'm head of school for computing and mathematical sciences and computer scientist by trade.
Kia ora. If you could start our presentation, that would be awesome. So yeah, our presentation today is about us sharing the background behind the Whakatohea Waiata app, and to give a little bit of context behind its development and its creation. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about who we are as a people. So Whakatohea is based in the Eastern Bay of Plenty town of Opotiki. We only have about 10% of our registered members living in Opotiki, so that equates to about 1,700. So 90% of our people live away from home. We have a particular challenge, and that's to maintain our culture, our language, and our identity, to make sure that it's sustainable for the future. And one of the things that we have talked about is how can we ensure that not only the 10% that live here in Opotiki, but the rest of the 90% as well, how can they engage in learning about where they come from, about who they are, about their culture. So that's particularly the concern or the issue and the challenge that we've had as Whakatohea, and the main reason why we've created the Waiata app. But just to quickly share with you, our vision is based on a whakatauki, a proverb that reminds us about the importance of our land, the sustainability of our people from the land, the sea, the bush, that our people had survived for over 800 years before the arrival of the Pākehā people into our area. And our purpose is to lift our nation and to grow and invest in the well-being of our people. Next slide, please. And I'm going to hand it over to Anita to talk about this slide.
Kia ora. So we had real simple goals. The whole purpose of creating our Whakatohea Waiata app was to be able to pass on our history, our kōrero tuku iho, through all our waiata, because many of our composers, all our waiata are written about our history. And we use it within our kura, within our schools, and our ECEs, and our kohanga reo, to pass on kōrero that can help us teach our culture, our language, and our identity. Also, to learn and teach about app development. It was a totally new thing for us in 2019. And we're so grateful for what Anika and her great team have helped us learn about app development. As you can see, our Whakatohea Waiata tohu, this was designed by Rangi Māori e Biro, and her grandmother, her kuia, is one of our many great composers. And we actually launched the app on the day that she had passed, or a year after. So Whakatohea Tohe Rauariki talks about all the many composers as being ariki, because our ariki pass on the knowledge, pass on our kōrero tuku iho. So they're all rauariki, meaning the hundreds and hundreds of composers we have here in Whakatohea. And we're so fortunate that we've been able to maintain all this waiata. Still many waiata we need to add to our app. We are not. We're not. A little bit of in kōrero, but no doubt you would have downloaded the app, which you can see all these photos come through in the explanation of it. So nice and simple. We decided on 4 genres, and there's a few of the waiata that show up to those who are Whakatohea iwi, and just nice and simple. As you can see how the words are written. I remember when we first had couple of our first meetings about the development of the app was keep it simple, like how Spotify is nice and simple, even though Spotify don't really give you the words, but yeah. Kia ora.
So one of the main concerns beyond the 2 goals that the iwi had was in the development of the app to consider data sovereignty and data governance. So who owns the design, who owns the app itself, and how can we enable and support the iwi in basically managing their own data, even though there's software that is being developed for them. So you can see here that one of the steps we undertook was the co-design of the app. And so that includes actually going over to Opotiki, having lots of kai together. And then of course, lockdown got us. So we have meetings in person, meetings in on Zoom. So we meet up every week to really keep that connection going and to talk through how the app is progressing. In terms of how the iwi managed the data, we use the Tipple dashboard. So Anita will talk in a moment about the data capturing and how they went about it. So we provided a dashboard for the iwi to upload all of the data. The data that is contained there still belongs to the iwi and is under the control of the iwi. Then from the dashboard, additionally, design decisions get made, again, uploaded. As Anita had said, we have the design that comes from the iwi and is being used there. So from the dashboard coming the data, so that goes into the app framework, pulls this together, and out of the Tipple app framework, we get basically automatically two different apps, one for Apple phones and iPhones, and the other one for Android.
Capturing all the data, a lot of, as we do when you have to do a lot of typing, so making sure all our kupu, our words were correct, going over it and over it again, but having that Tipple dashboard made it so much easier, and being able to do both our reo, English and Māori, then getting a variety of singers. So it wasn't just one person, might have been a couple, and then of course some groups. And luckily having great connections within our community. So we used the local radio station, used their sound booth, and also just a lot of our composers' family, their whānau or their grandchildren or their children, when we asked them if they were able to sing their waiata, their mums or their kuias, grandmother's waiata, so that we keep it whānau orientated as well, and keep it safe. It's being preserved within the whānau as well for hapu and for iwi. The designing of the waiata genre, that was, I don't know how many times we went over it. We're just so lucky that Anika was very patient. Lots of changes throughout the whole time, hence that weekly meetings that we'd have to keep updating. Yeah, it was amazing.
So this is the interface for the dashboard. So here you can see the genres that Anita just talked about. So uploading the different options. There were a number of changes that were made because as you start developing and you discover what the opportunities are, of course, there's changes as you look at the different ways to even do the design and the details. So here, just briefly, an overview of how it looks in the dashboard when a single waiata is uploaded. So you have the words in te reo and in English, and in parallel, you can upload the recording. And then also, in addition to just having the words on the recording, we have then metadata that helps sorting and organizing so that you can search by genres, by composers, by hapu. We have the decisions of who can access. We'll come back to this in a moment, but not all of the waiata are for the general public. So the iwi can decide which of those waiata will be accessible to everyone and which ones will be restricted. And then there's decisions to be made about data rights. And again, so this is something that then gets communicated so that people who have access to the waiata then can observe the preferences of the iwi of how to access and what to do with the data. So just looking at here, the TK labels that were used. So this is how it comes out in the app in the end. It is similar to having a copyright notice. You can't necessarily enforce it, but you can indicate what the preferences are. And I'm handing over to Danny to talk a bit more about how those TK labels come about.
Yeah, so it's been interesting listening to the discussion around data and data sovereignty. One of the things that Whakatohi has been privileged to have being a part of this year is to pilot a new project called the Traditional Knowledge Labels. And there are 20 labels that have been created overseas by other Indigenous groups that will help to protect the use, I guess, of specific items that those tribes will choose. So for us, we want to ensure that our waiata are protected in this particular app, that they're not going to be used by other people without, the appropriate permissions. And therefore, the initial download of the app will only allow you to see 3 waiata, but there are many more on there because they have, I guess, protection mechanisms in place. So what you can see on the screen are several of the different labels that you could apply to certain items.
And as already referred to several times, so if you have downloaded the app now, most of you will only be able to see exactly 3 of the waiata there on the right-hand side. And what you can see, the screenshot on the left-hand side is actually what the iwi can see. So 30 and more waiata. And so that was so that the taonga of these waiata is protected, but still the wider public has access and has some insight and gets, an inkling of the knowledge that is there in the iwi. So overall, I mean, this has been a project for the last 2-3 years, and it's still under development. So we have the waiata app, and we've developed the dashboard for the iwi. So we now have all these waiata, the sharing of the history, and the inbuilt data protection, as we just briefly talked about. So we launched the app in 2020, but as an ongoing project, we're still having training on the maintenance of the app and the data storage. So this is something that the iwi can take over, and doesn't mean that they have to always come back to us, but they can also determine when they want to make changes to the app, and it's absolutely up to them. So it is now an iwi resource that is under ongoing improvement, but still with support as long as they want to have us for that.
Okay, so our next steps, we're continuing to invite all our composers to give us more waiata. I have been collecting waiata for over 35 years, and I have a big stack, but it's about getting our composers to say yes, even those who have passed, so we talk to their whānau and being able to share it with, as they know, with our iwi. Of course, recording more of our waiata in different mediums. So for example, adding guitar chords, because a lot of our whānau ask, well, how do you play the waiata? So adding guitar chords, musical scores, also adding videos for the actions, because the same again, we want our iwi to be all doing the same actions. One of the waiata that was first downloaded was called E Koreo, and we know it's been sung like all over New Zealand. However, even here in Aotearoa, every school was doing their own actions. So, that waiata is very old, but no one had actually taught each of our schools the right actions. But now we finally have it, and we're waiting for that to come out on our app. Also to work with some hapu have been asking about their own app, because a lot of the hapu have waiata that they have not given to our Whakatohea waiata app. But yeah, that's another amazing opportunity too. And like Anika said, and also, sorry, I forgot who the speaker was earlier, about, how to give our own people that knowledge, and so they could create apps for our hapu. So we're at the stage now doing a new app called Takuhikoi, exactly like the app Storio, I think it was called. Again, putting our kōrero tukuiho, our history, onto an app using our pou kōrero. So we're having 12 pou, and on each of those pou, different kōrero from our 6 hapu, and every matariki, we change the kōrero. So we got, fingers crossed, we're launching at matariki this year.
Just quickly here, our dreams and aspirations, I guess, I guess we want to grow digital technology in our iwi. We want to utilise the expertise that we have around us. The University of Waikato have been absolutely amazing to provide their technical skill to bring our dreams and aspirations together. But it's also about growing our local knowledge and our local champions to drive these aspirations forward. And it's about trying to figure out, I guess, what your solutions are to achieving the dreams and aspirations that you have. So for us, the Waikato app is one of those many things that we believe have been really awesome for us to achieve, I guess, to provide solutions to our issues. And just to finish, just a big thank you, and I know that our time is up for speaking, but again, once I just really want to acknowledge the University of Waikato. Thank you, Anika, also to Alvin, Anita, for the amazing, grounded information, mātauranga that we have right here in Whakatohea. Nō reira, kia ora tātou. Thank you for listening.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Anita, Anika, Danny. Thank you for your presentation, showcasing the work that you've been doing since what did you start? 2018, did you say? Yes.
Yeah, 2018,
yeah, amazing. So we have some time for just maybe a few questions if people do have them. And just for simplicity, if you do have any questions, please just put them into the chat and I can read them out from there to anyone from the 3 people that we spoke to, or to everyone. To kind of kick us off, I guess just a few minutes of quick Q&A afterwards is, how did it, we'd love to hear, how well did it go for the iwi? Like, what was that in terms of the, I guess, carrying them, now that you've developed it and it's out there in the world, what is it like for iwi now?
Yeah, so one of the amazing things about the app itself is that, when we have people coming back to the marae or back to Opotiki for a different kaupapa, a lot of them have struggled in the past to find a suitable song to sing if they go to the marae. But now they can bring the app with them and actually share it amongst themselves. They can learn it at home. They can hear the correct tune, learn about the history of those waiata, and then be confident to be able to sing the waiata with their whānau when they come to these occasions back here at home. So the uptake has been really amazing as well. We're really surprised how many people have downloaded the app for that purpose.
Awesome. And someone just asked, how did you work out which waiata to start with? What was your first one?
Oh, we have, I presume, like all iwi tribes, you have those, what do you call them? The national anthems. So those were the first 3 waiata we chose, the ones that everybody knows, just to make sure we got the right words out, the right, like Danny just said, the right tune, and then of course the actions that follow. But we did that, I went around to every school to make sure that we'd all learn the actions first, but one day it'll be up on the app. And then, so my real main purpose for the waiata personally was for our moteatea, our traditional waiata, putting those up because we needed them on the marae. And so now when we go to Pōhiri or we're on the marae and somebody will say, okay, whaia, which waiata, asking me which waiata we're going to sing so they can, have it ready. Even though that wasn't our intention to just use it on the pai, pull out your phones. Well, back in the days, we used to pull out books. So I found my old waiata book and that's how little it was, you'd still have it just to try and think, oh, what song shall we sing next? But
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, folks, for your presentation and for sharing this with us. Thank you so much for your reflections and staying with us until the very end. We just going to do, a quick 1 minute, 2 minutes. Thank you to everyone for today. First and foremost, our sponsors, Trust Waikato, for recognizing the importance of these conversations and putting the support behind the event. Thank you to Dennis and Rongo. I'm not sure if they're here still. Tonight would not have been so engaging without our incredible speakers. We have Jannat, Tim, Amber, Kane, Alvin, Danny, Anita, and Annika. Thank you so much. We would also have to thank Alvin specifically from Waikato University, who we didn't hear from tonight, but he's here with us. I just saw him on the screen, who also worked on the Whakatauhira group the project. On our own team, we would like to say a huge thank you to Sarah Roberts, who put much of the thought into organizing and finding speakers and connecting people together and getting all this done. Sammy and the team at Event Elves, I love the name, for their awesome tech support, all the smooth breakout rooms and slides and everything else. And finally, the Impact Hub team, Nanise, Timon, Emma, and Chantel. Thank you for pulling this event together. If you love the event, we encourage you to sign up to a free community as a free community member, and link will be in the chat so that you can receive all the info for the upcoming events. And yeah, thank you for asking me to be your MC.
Amazing, Elena. That's how we should really wrap up, is by saying thank you to you. You just did a wonderful job tonight of facilitating all of the great conversations that happened. So that's so appreciated. Thank you so much for coming in and making our event a fun one.
Awesome, thank you. I thought maybe if we have 2 seconds, so since we opened with a karakia, we can close with a karakia, so we can go into our evenings. So let us pray. Kina tato. Onuhia, onuhia, onuhia ki te oro tapanui, ke a wātea, ke a mama te nako, te tinana te warua e te ara tangata. Ko e rai rongo whakairea ake ki runga.